What's up, everybody? Once again, it is I, James, this time coming to you from the days of future past. Wanted to let you guys know this is part 2 of the podcast with Guy and Ian Dorian. We left off with Guy telling us how he broke in, how he got into the comic book industry. And this part is going to pick up with Ian sharing how he got into the industry. I hope you guys enjoy it. I know I enjoyed recording it. They're incredibly interesting people, and I look forward to many more future conversations with them. I think we're going to do one with each of them individually, which should be really cool and special. All right, so take care, keep it nerdy, and enjoy this episode.
Ian? Was that, did I answer it? Oh,
No, that was great. Yeah, that was great. We'll let Ian say how he broke in, and then we'll bounce back to you and talk about, we'll wrap things up with your current work and where people can see your stuff and support.
Sure.
And then we'll get things wrapped up after that. So Ian, go ahead with how you got your big break.
Well, I apologize if I just found the not fighting, but I wouldn't reference my career as one particular big break. I apologize for that. I would really reference this as several opportunities throughout my lifetime. I too did begin some assistant work as well. One of the reasons Guy may not remember, because he was so busy assisting, was that I actually started assisting Lou Small Jr. And while we were with Mark Marcella, I believe we both did, Guy did more work on the stuff, but for the first time, we also worked on Alpha Flight, where North Star, the first comic where North Star professes that he is gay. We
okay, the one where he came out in there, yeah.
yeah, that was the early. That was some of the early stuff.
Very early on, yeah. We assisted on that book. Guy assisted on many more books, and huge credit.
Like you said,
Dan
I remember
Penosian.
now. You started working with Lou Small.
Yeah. So Dan Penosian was teaching us about inking and about finishing and so forth. And just sitting there watching them work was a lesson in and of itself.
Seeing a fellow Armenian, no less.
Yeah.
I know Dan. Yeah, I got to have Dan on here too one of these days.
Well, that being said, I assisted Lou and went to Neil. Now, I could have stayed in, and Neil, I stopped going as often to Neil's office, and he said, Ian, where are you? Why haven't you come in? Why didn't you come in on Thursday? I said, well, I had an exam on Thursday. And he said, well, what happened to Wednesday? The Wednesday I was studying for the Thursday exam. So he said to me, and he didn't mean it in a negative way, he meant to focus. He said, you're going to have to at some point decide comics or college. And it was actually that made me go back to college full time. Not because I didn't love comics passionately, but I was very passionate about getting a master's degree, and I didn't even have a bachelor's degree. So I went back to college. I got my bachelor's degree. In the interim, I had worked as an assistant for several different artists. And then in 95, I went to meet Mark Silvestri in Pittsburgh. And I showed him several pages of work. And he said, did you draw these pages? And I said, yes, sir, I did. I said, as a matter of fact, if you'd like, I have a pencil. I can draw it for you right now. And he said, well, I could use another artist on my team. Why don't you send in your work and make sure that I get it? You can say that you met me, and I'll take care of it. And I walked away, and I was a quite doubtful person at the time. I didn't see that opportunity was there for me. Oftentimes I would shy away from it. And someone grabbed my arm, and it was a blonde-haired woman, I believe the woman who either at the time or in the future became his wife. And she said, you are going to send your work in to Mark, right? And I said, I might. And she said, well, if he's saying this to you, he's not lying. He will hire you. So I would have gone to Image in 95. But that is the exact year I decided to go back to college because I was standing at a precipice. I had to make a choice before I either went off the edge or went back. And so I went to college. I got my bachelor's degree, and then I went to graduate school for my master's. When I got into my master's, before I went in for my master's, by the way, I didn't use any illustration work. To get my master's, I had read several books on quantum mechanics, and one of the books was for lay people, and it was written by Dr. Brian Greene, and it was called The Elegant Universe. And I called Dr. Greene to discuss the book with him and tell him that I was doing. He was in Columbia University; he may still be there. I told him that I would like to do artwork, kinetic objects with sound and color and light, that would describe the notions of ideas that he expresses in his work, in his writings. And he approved my work, and I sent it out, and I got into graduate school as a videographer and sculptor, doing 4D, which is video pieces based on quantum mechanics. I spent 2 years there.
Oh, very cool.
Yeah, I spent 2 years there. I showed at my work at the end of the 2 years when I got my master's, showed at the museum, the Delaware Museum of Contemporary Art. And I was offered a show there, and I showed there. I became a professor, and I moved back to Jersey, and I taught at the Curie School and other places. But before the Curie School, I had the opportunity to, the Art Directors Guild of Jersey and New York asked me to draw a comic book because someone had heard I work doing comics. I said, oh, well, I was an assistant years ago, and when I had opportunities, but I didn't go after it. So I drew a comic for them, which was not the best, to say the least. I hadn't drawn in several years. I had been a sculptor for many years at that point. But I loved the energy, I loved that it was not in the same way academic and so forth. And I could just do it and revive my interests. And so I applied to the Joe Kubert School to be a teacher, and I got accepted to be an instructor. And that was kind of like me going back to school in a way and going back to comics. That really helped me meet other artists. And I started assisting Rags Morales. I was assisting Mark Texeira, Ghost Rider, Punisher. And they taught me a lot of things, really got my leg back, with comic books. And only a few years later, Guy and I teamed up with Matthew Pilata, who was my dearest friend, and I was working for him for a government organization. And they, Matt always wanted to work in entertainment. And so we started a separate division of the company called BKMM Entertainment. And Guy came on as well as I did in multiple fashions, first inking over my work and then doing his own books as well as I did my own book. And here's one of our books called Law of Resistance.
Oh, nice. I saw some of the preview pages of that. Yeah.
You can actually see
beautiful.
Part of one of the images here. And then that brought us back to all the other artists. And from that, I worked on Avengers Assemble character design with Guy as finisher, inker. Then I worked with a bunch of people from Capital One and Pixar.
Yeah, and I encourage people to watch the video version of this if you want to see some of the art they're holding up. And Ian has some really awesome artwork behind him. And of course, in the show notes, I'll put all the links where you can see their work. But there's a lot of cool stuff being shown on cam here. Rom, that's a
Guy. So that sort of revived
my inker,
our return.
Beautiful.
Yeah. On Law of Resistance was with the main finishers. Inkers were Mark Texeira, Joe Weems, Matt Banning, and Bill Sienkiewicz.
Bill Sienkiewicz.
And
that's like a That's like an all-star
Fucking
crew
dream
right there.
team. Yeah, man.
Unbelievable.
If you haven't seen the book, anyone, you really got to get this book. But that is some of the most beautiful comic art I've seen in the past 25 years. I'm not kidding. I'm not kidding.
Dean White, I specifically sought after Dean White to color over the work, and he did a beautiful job.
Did you say no, I was gonna make a joke,
and Ross Campbell actually came on, a relationship with Guy. He came on to color much
Ross
of the book
was
as
my
well.
colorist for a long time. Ian had a lot of the academy stuff and the connections with schools and prestigious art, and he would go to Italy and study stone carving and things like that. Where I went after I got in.
Guy went to toys.
I was at the offices, and I had been working at Marvel for a few years now, and I was doing New Warriors and Night Thrasher and moving around from different, book, this story, that story, this thing. And there was an office, there was a door that said Toy Biz. I wasn't too familiar with it at the time, because even though I didn't have any money to collect, I already had children. I had a child. And
right.
So I peeped my head into John's office. Yes, John Romita Sr. And I'm like, hey, John, what's that door? What is that company? The door's always closed. What is that? He said, what? The one over there? Toy Biz. And he at the time was I forget the title of that, what he did, but he was basically the art director for all the packaging.
He was the head of...
Yeah, creative director, art director of all that stuff. So, and they also were doing television and stuff as well, Silver Surfer, and they were, even though it was a toy company, but Marvel and them, it was all owned by Marvel and stuff. So he says, you want to meet the guys? I'm like, please. I always, if they do toys, I always wanted to do toys. So, because I that's my thing, So he knocks.
You didn't have to twist your arm. He didn't have to twist your arm to get you through that door.
No, and with John Romita's hand on my fucking shoulder, my trap, and him knocking on the door and saying, that was the beginning of my toy company work and my work on merchandise. And he said, you should take a look at this guy's work. He's new. He's kind of new here. We all like him. He's a great guy. You should take a look at his work. They looked at my work and they said, we have some Silver Surfer stuff. We do asset art, and that asset art will go to the animators who are working on the Silver Surfer cartoon. Plus, it may be used for boxes and things in the future and other stuff. Consumer products. Yes, thanks, Ian. And I got my first job. Dudes paid 3 times the amount I got for a page to draw one figure. And so from that, I was still doing comics, but I was like, screw this. I got a child. I have a wife. I got to pay for this stuff. And I started a career there, and I shifted for a good, 10 years. I shifted over to toy, and I worked with the WWF, and I still had to, when I went to other companies, I still had to convince them to hire me, because they're like, you're a comic. Now I was a comic book artist, and they're like, yeah, but you're a comic book artist. You don't do toys. And I'm like, but I did some stuff, and it's still, I had to start all the way over again, but I did it again. I'm not afraid of shit. So if somebody says, go do this, this is a challenge, I can jump in, and I go, oh, really? I'm going to find a way in, and I will scratch and claw whatever I have to do. I got into the toy companies, and then I wound up working on stuff. I did a little Power Rangers thing even. I did these Nerf guns and all this stuff, and then I wound up working on Xena Warrior Princess. And I even drew pods. Then I worked on. They knew I did toys, and I worked on as an assistant before without any credit, but on X-Force and things like that. So they said, "Hey, Rob Liefeld's doing this one, and he hired us to do the toys for Youngblood." So I designed I believe the first ones were Bendham's. I don't know if they were the first toys or not. I think so. And so I designed all those, and they had Rob's specific covers on each one in the back. And here I am,
Right.
from comics, but sort of backing comics with the. And here I am being.
Yeah.
And I started out as an assistant on stuff that Mark took over for Rob, but Rob is still plotting those stories. So I was inadvertently working with Rob in that way. It's kind of weird. And then here I am again a few years later, and now I'm designing the toys for Rob's Youngblood. And the packaging. And I brought Ian in on some of that packaging and stuff.
You gave me work
and then Ian
as
even
a colorist.
And Ian even helped me color on my WWF. I designed a whole new line. I was the lead designer on a whole new line of bendable figures.
Yeah.
That still had to stand, but they were for the WWF.
Guy came up with a design that would allow them to move in a way that Bendham's usually didn't move. Although he did not get a creator credit or ownership or percentage.
It seems to be a common theme these days.
Yeah.
But he did nonetheless.
And those toys became very popular. So popular that they kept that company going even after all of their other products and they were closing the doors. The only thing they were still selling was that. And then Matt Cardona, famous wrestler, his wife is actually in the WWE. He was for a little while. They call him I forget what they call him right now. Anyway, he is the king of indie wrestlers now. He has a toy company with a couple of guys and Mike Canick and a few other guys. And they asked me because when I did the WWF, Macho Man could no longer be done. And now I'm segueing into what I'm doing now. Macho Man couldn't be done. They asked me, they wanted to fulfill that because they were big fans of my wrestler stuff. And each wrestler thing had my name on it, my card. When I finally revealed online that I was the guy and I was alive and I was the one who did that, it blew up. Everyone's like, holy shit, that's the guy who fucking designed all this stuff. We've been looking for you forever, bro. Anyway, I didn't know. I had no idea it was so popular. I had no idea. But I guess I wasn't thinking about when Razor Ramon's peddling the action figures that you did and Diesel and all these people. So just recently, we put out Macho Man Randy Savage, and I drew a specific trading card, and the first one that came out was with my stuff, and it was based off of my original designs that were never produced for Macho Man. All the other ones were. I did Undertaker and Lex Luger and Bret Hart and British Bulldog and Goldust and all this. Where do you go?
Looks like we lost your brother.
He'll pop back in. Anyway.
Yeah, he'll pop.
So I did all this stuff, and so then I'm into toys. So I have a new toy company that I'm working on. I create new projects. I work with John Carpenter and Sandy Carpenter with Louise Simonson.
Oh, wow.
Sal Buscema has been my anchor. I worked on a series called Core that Ian was talking about. It was my own series. And I was coming from the toy company stuff and going back into comics in that way. So this guy, Matt Pilata, a friend of ours, great friend of ours, but also a lover of comics, started a company. And he goes, well, want you guys are professionals. I really want you guys to start. What do you got? What can you do? And so I came up with this character Core, which was a love letter to Jack Kirby's Machine Man, Silver Surfer, Rom Space Knight. Anyway, I got to work and hire who I wanted and a lot of my friends. And I had already been in Marvel. You know, my career started out 30-something years ago. So Neil Adams did something on it. I worked a lot with Larry Hama on it. My son, who is 30-something years old, he got his start working as a main writer on that, and then Larry took over. Of course, I was co-plotter and all that, but I created all these characters and everything. A lot of work. I worked with Mike Royer on that. I worked with Sal Buscema on a lot of it, Scott Hanna. But Sal and I, Bob Wyacek in some of his last works that he did before he had the major eye problem, and Herb Trimpe's last work. But that's where Sal Buscema and I became a team. And
Yeah.
Bob Wyachek was having problems with his eyes. He goes, here's Sal Buscema's number. Give him a call. Sal was one of my heroes. And I became a team with Sal effing Buscema. I am still a team with Sal Buscema today. He and I work pretty exclusively together. I went and brought him with me over to John Carpenter, and Sandy Carpenter's company, Sandy's company, Storm King. And I worked on books with them and stories with them. And pretty much almost everything was inked by Sal Buscema. And as well, I brought on Scott Hanna at times. And I worked on a story with Bill Sienkiewicz. Ian got to work with Bill. I love Bill, good friends with him too. Not as long as I haven't known him as long as Ian, but we're very close. And he inked me on a story. So anyway, trying to say this all fast. We got to that, worked on that stuff. His Tales for a Halloween Night. And you can go check out Hyperbreed. Louise Simonson and I were pretty good pals, and then we decided to work together. We did an entire graphic novel for them. We did a 5-issue miniseries. Kelly Jones did a cover. Howard Chaykin did a cover. Walter Simonson did a cover. Me and Sal did a cover. Andrew Peapoy did a cover. It was just a whole star-studded thing. We did that, and then so Sal was with me on that, and then I got the chance to work on ROM. So you could go look at Hyperbreed. You can go look at the ROM series. My buddy Chris Ryall was a co-writer of Christos Gage and such. And great guys. I'm really, really tight with Chris Ryall. We worked on ROM. I got hired on ROM. It was one of my favorite heroes of all time. And I couldn't believe I'm working on ROM. But not only am I working on ROM, I'm working on, it just so happens, my inker is fucking Sal Buscema, who's super famous for ROM.
How surreal.
Dude, if you would have told me when I was 11 years old that someday my favorite artist, Sal Buscema, the guy I fucking follow, I would be with ROM, that he and I would be collaborating together on the next era of ROM. So I worked on that, and then eventually Chris Ryall got the okay for us to draw a traditional ROM on Rom Dire Wraith, which you could see here. Ironically, this was a homage I did to Ivan Reyes, one of my favorite artists, with Joe Prado, who was a beautiful inker and a great guy. And I contacted Joe and Ivan and said, do you mind if I use this? But I also know that they use this. If you don't know, this was not necessarily, this pose was a Superman from Neil Adams.
Yeah. Yeah.
So then Ivan did it, and I was like, I want to now go from Neil to Ivan to me and Sal. And I use this on the final cover of Rom Dire Race. And it's that traditional Rom, mitten hands and all. I became pretty famous for Rom. To the fans, apparently, as they have told me many times now, I am the next coming of the Sal Buscema era. I am the ROM artist of this day. I am, from fans, thank you very much, by the way. It's very kind of everyone that I am, the most prominent known ROM guy of the era. And I tried to make sure I really fucking showed up,
You did, I can tell.
Yeah, this is Chris Ryall. I drew on the cover. And then you got me over here. And then Sal Buscema down here. I drew us on the actual cover. Anyway.
Amazing.
So, and now, so I could finish up so Ian could talk about what he's doing, is I am working on, I got Larry Hama and I are putting together a series called Mounties vs. Werewolves. Scott Hanna will be inking on it, and a bunch of other incredible people. Hold on, I just don't want to forget. I want to say everyone that's on it, and I want to say when the campaign's going to start. So I don't want to get this wrong. But anyway,
no
so
problem.
Scott Hanna should be doing some stuff on it. Kevin Conrad will be doing some stuff on it. Mark Spears has been working on Spawn and X-Men and covers for Marvel, and he's got his own monster stuff. Incredible artist, painter. He contributed a cover. Kelly Jones is contributing a cover. Larry Hama did layouts on one of the covers, and I did the final art. And we're just it's just like this badass thing that Larry wanted to do. My son is the editor. So that's going to be coming out very soon, guys. We've been working on the campaign, and a guy named Chris Wepler I hired in graphics. He's the main graphics guy. He's got it almost ready. And then I have a toy company that we've been working on with. I got Louise Simonson I brought on, Louise Simonson, Sal Buscema, Scott Hanna, Walter Simonson writing. I'm drawing most of the first 4 comics that come with the action figure. It's called Lost Lander. And the Kickstarter for that's going to be coming out. And these are the proof of concept figures. These are going to be action figures, and they're going to be comic books with action figures. And we have this whole story that Thomas and I put together. Thomas Chilemi is my partner. Take a look at some of these characters.
Oh, that's badass.
Now, Thomas had done independent comics with his own company called Azure Press, and he and I met each other through doing a signing at his store. He had Sal lives near his store, and so we got together, and I was going to be putting it together with a few other people, and then I brought it up to him because he and I got along really well, and he's an independent guy who I felt could explore and broaden. And sometimes you meet someone, and everyone, there's a lot of guys who tell me only work with the big guys all the time, but I work with the big guys all the time. There are other people out there who could be big guys that you just don't know about until they get their shot with the big guys. Now, Thomas had some great ideas and everything like that, but he was putting together something. He and I got together, started talking, and it evolved into something different. We came up with Lost Landers, and I'll just show a few more of the figures. They've been selling at conventions now. This guy's based off of me, actually. How funny is that?
Nice.
And it's not narcissism. It just makes sense. Here's one of the villains. Let me just put this up close. So his name is Slosh. And we've got some really cool stuff. So it'll be Lost Landers coming out soon. The Kickstarter for that. Again, Wheezy, Walter, Chris Ryall wrote a story. It's a really crazy, interesting cast of characters, and it's made for kids as well as adult collectors who we look at it this way. It's not necessarily retro, but what it is it should have been a series in the 80s on TV. It didn't come out, but then we developed it for today's times, but it's still targeted towards as 10 and 12-year-olds, 9, 10, 12, 14, 12-year-olds, and adult collectors like myself. And then you got Mounties vs. Werewolves. So look for Mounties vs. Werewolves first in the next 3 weeks to 4 weeks, and then look for Lost Lander. And I have other projects that I can't even fucking remember right now. So Ian, you can go.
Perfect. And what I'll do is any links you want to send me, I will put them in the show notes for both on YouTube and the podcast audio version as well. So anything that you forgot, just send them to me after the fact and we'll get them in there.
I'll just say that I can't say what they are, but my son, myself, my company is called Good Alien. Louise Simonson is one of the main members. Bill Sienkiewicz is a member. Sal Buscema is a member. Larry Hama is a member. Walter Simonson was there at my booth. I just had a booth. Scott Hanna for Good Alien. Good Alien is a company of artists who are for artists and creators, and creating an environment of art where people get their credit, their due, and get paid. We're also spreading this out to assist people and assist in the future Hero Initiative and all those types of things. So look for Good Aliens. Had been at several conventions already. And what was I going to say? Trying to say one other thing about it. Who gives a shit? Oh, movie. We have. I happen to know people in Hollywood. And for the last 3 years, I've been developing stuff with Good Alien. My son's a writer, and a guy named Jerry Manis, who has been involved in Good Alien for a while. He's a very well established prose writer, novelist. Is fantastic. Anyway, so we have put together a few films and TV shows, which the pandemic screwed us and stuff like that. But we're getting back on track. So pretty soon you should be seeing some of that stuff. If you want to see Ian and I collab, sorry, Ian, if you want, because Ian may forget.
Go for it.
If you want to see Ian and I collaborating, if you look at Avengers Assemble artwork, the villains that you'll see everywhere on T-shirts, toys, Hot Wheels cars, in Disney World at the superhero shop on the wall, belts, hats, cups, mugs, you name it. Ian was the illustrator. I don't want him to forget. He was the main illustrator on these where I inked. He also, and it's in stores today. You could find like these finger fighters for kids at Five Below right now. You can go buy mugs and everything. And Ian's illustration on that stuff for the villain, for the last 7 years, has been on stuff all over. If you look behind me, there's a giant canvas thing on there. They even used the Chitauri that Ian illustrated beautifully, by the way, and I inked on that poster, which is everywhere. It was on. I saw what's his name, the guy who plays Spider-Man today now, doing a puzzle, and it had our artwork on it. And Ian sometimes doesn't let people know about some of that stuff. That's why I wanted to make sure that I talked about how Ian's work is all over the world with this stuff. And Ian doesn't push that, but it's a big deal.
Yeah, very big deal.
All right. So good, because my earpiece is dying. This one.
All right.
Technology, right?
Yes, sir.
So about a year ago, I was doing some volunteer work for the poor, the homeless, and I took a fall, carrying a lot of things. And normally, as a martial artist, you know how to fall. You just kind of instinctively or through training before.
Yeah.
I couldn't, because we don't train with bags and boxes in our hands, so we learn to roll. So I fell forward and I tore my muscle. And for about 9 months, I could barely draw.
You tore your pectoral muscle or in your shoulder?
And
Yeah. Yeah, I tore this pec on the left side many, many years ago. Not fun. Would not recommend.
No, the pain is excruciating.
Yeah.
That being said, I wasn't able to draw, and I had done a lot of writing. When I was in college, I was writing. My professors wanted me to publish my writing, my short stories, and I didn't. I said, I'm a writer. I was kind of focused on philosophy and history as minors when I was an art major.
So you were more, you always considered yourself more of an artist over a writer, or vice versa?
Well, I knew art was something I definitely wanted to pursue. I had pursued it as a young man along with Guy, and it was something I needed to see through before I felt ready to write. And then I worked with writers years later in the comics. Although it's a different form of writing, I was writing prose. When I hurt my arm, I couldn't draw. So there were stories that I wanted to write, and screenplays I wanted to write. And I wasn't able to actually write it because of the damage I had to my arm. So I had a woman that I worked with on consumer products. We did Family Guy, we did Simpsons, we did The Princesses, we did several other projects together. But she used to work over a guy named Glenn Keane, who was a key animator on the Disney movies. And she was a finisher. She had the most beautiful line you've ever seen. Absolutely stunning. She worked on doing finishes on Mulan, which were gorgeous.
Oh, wonderful.
In front of me, and it was just magnificent. But he, having worked with me for many years, offered to do the typing as I dictated the story. I had written as much as I could using a machine to dictate. And then I really felt that I needed someone or human to work with, not just my notes on my phone. So
Yeah.
Bohanowski became my assistant for that. And she knows me very well. She knows the kinds of stories I want to tell. And she has really been there. I wrote a rough outline, and then I'm finishing an outline for a screenplay for a trilogy. I've presented it to several actors, and I have gotten a very strong response from a majority of the main actors.
That's awesome.
With an animation studio in Pasadena, a boutique studio, and they said they love my idea, my concept, and they want to help me make it into not only a live action production, but adult animated production. And so essentially, I'm mostly writing these.
Okay.
And now I'm at the stage where my arm is recovered. I am unfortunately dealing with sciatica, which makes it very hard to do, right?
Yeah, excruciating.
But I'm coming out of that, luckily. Otherwise, I wouldn't have been able to do the interview. But I only mention it because Guy taught me years ago not to hide the challenges you have, but then it could inspire other people.
Definitely.
If you share those challenges and yet you still show that you can. It was a big lesson I learned from my brother. That being said, so I've been spending a lot of my time meeting with actors, meeting with agents, going to visit them. When the actor comes to the state, to California, I live in Southern California. I live in Glendale. When the actors come, I go to the shows to speak with them directly, or with their agent. The agents are available to speak with me, and I just to get their vibe, their interest, not to do any business deal, but to see their interest. And some of them have been friends of mine for years, and that's why I would speak with them directly. And so now I'm at the part where I'm now refining the pitch deck and keeping the momentum going with the writer, who is the animation studio with with the actors, and it sounds very promising. I do intend to continue as an artist, but as well, and I want people to know that my goal has always been, actually, since I was even younger, Guy and I made a lot of films together. We did films, and I did theater. I did stage. I was a dancer, actually, for several years. And Guy did his own television, of course. And Guy and I even acted in indie films together, where we were supporting roles.
That was a great experience because both Ian and I got to work together, and I had taken. Yeah, and I had studied in New York, actually, and I was doing one-act plays, and I started out, a buddy of mine was an extra on things, and then I became an extra, and then a featured extra. And little quick note, the first time I sent my stuff into New York City, I got a job as an extra. Then I got a line, which turned out to be one word at the end. That's another story. But do you know how I got there? How I got on set with Ian drove my ass. He goes, I'm driving you. It's early in the morning. I think he had to drive me at like 4 o'clock in the morning so I could get there.
It was 3:30 or 4 in the morning.
Yeah.
And early.
Wow.
And the first person I met on this
city.
Yep. Ian brought me there. And the first person
with Danny Aiello.
Yep.
And John Corbett. You'll know John Corbett. You'll know him from my Big Fat Greek Wedding.
Absolutely.
He was also on Spectrum City.
Yep. One of my wife's favorite shows. She knows exactly who that is.
John is a musician, by the way. He's an incredible musician. But also, I got along very well with John, and Guy and I both. But I had the Guy was getting prepared, and I had the opportunity with John, and I actually walked through the city with John, and
And first Jack Kirby, and now this. Now he's hanging out with this guy.
I'm going to have to upstage everything. Not really upstage, but there is somebody that I got to meet that almost nobody on the planet ever got to meet. Ian, do you remember who that was?
If you walk in my way.
I got, real quick, it's a great story because it was Jack Kirby's birthday and Jack's family asked me to be, remember I mentioned to be on the podcast with him.
Talking about Chris Walken, although you did.
I've been backstage with Christopher Walken and everything.
Wow.
I got to meet someone so incredible. And just to let you know, I wanted to finish with this and we're going to go back to Guy.
Yeah.
I am doing, I started off thinking that I always wanted to be a director. I wanted to be more specific. I wanted to be an auteur. I wanted to be a Stanley Kubrick, be more like James Cameron. James was a truck driver, and James could draw. And Ridley Scott, James Cameron, Hitchcock, they were all artists.
Yes.
On board. And so my dream was always actually to become a director, a writer-director, and my goal is to do work in the manner of James Cameron, to draw, illustrate, design, board as much of my work as possible, to bring those visions to life. And the only reason why it matters so much to me to do it on film is because I wish to reach a much larger audience. And because I believe that the collaborative system that exists within the film is a wonderful process. I really enjoy collaboration. And I enjoy having people who are even more talented than me in many other ways. I'm excited about, I'm the kind of guy that gets excited about working with a gaffer I like, with someone who manages the lighting for a movie.
Yes.
Or being able to meet and work with my favorite DP, to me, that's exciting. I'm intrigued by the technology and people who are behind it. The whole process is amazing to me. Guy actually has much more experience on a professional set. So I'm now reaching that goal in my own way, to take the same things that we did on this scale and to do it in another scale. But to be honest with you, it's a very similar process. You're dealing with personalities, you're dealing with budgets, you're dealing with deadlines, you're dealing with reaching an audience, understanding story, learning from others on the go, and doing your very best. And so my dream is to hopefully, my things don't come out as quickly as Guy. I'm slower. I just gestate and build up to things. And the reason why Guy was so kind to say about my drawing, about my work, is because you'll find me late at night and early in the morning redrawing things until they are the way.
Gotcha.
Guy has the same obsession, but in a different way. As Guy had started out, finishes off, and to round it out for Guy to complete it. In the beginning, Guy said that we are very similar, but we're very different. So Guy and I agree on what to do, but we usually drastically disagree on how to do it or what to do first. And so that's where we're different. Other than that, we're essentially, and for the most part, the same to outside viewers. Guy?
That's very interesting. Now I want to hear about this famous person you got to hang out with.
We'll end it here. We'll put links on stuff later.
Yes, sir. And we'll get all the links. I'll put links to your social media and everything as well, so people can go and give you a follow. Let's close it out with this big, prestigious Hollywood story.
So here's what happened. So, I have this tendency to turn around and I'm standing with movie producers, or I'm talking to someone famous, or I'm having lunch with, the guy who played Joffrey on what,
Game of Thrones.
yeah. And,
Yeah.
and it's just always happened. So I get asked to do the thing. I go into the city and I go, and here I am. All right. One of the biggest things I could have done, it was great with Jack Kirby's own family. So and it's Jack Kirby's birthday, no less, this day. So I'm in the city. I do that. I'm going to go take a walk over. You know who's off? There's this guy who has an office who's not too far from where I was. Let me go. He's very notorious for never, ever answering. And if he did, he'd say, get the F off my porch, basically. I go up to the office, and there was talk at Marvel many years ago amongst people. I don't think anything was ever like legitimately discussed, but there were people talking about, hey, we need somebody to embellish over this guy. He's up there now, and he's got a lot of him. He's going to do a book. It's going to be embellished. And maybe this guy, Guy Dorian Sr., this young kid, would be perfect for that. So apparently he heard about this. And so I used my name, and I said, hey, I worked at Marvel. And, I went into the front, and there was a security guy. And I said, could you just tell him that Guy Dorian Sr. is here and wants to say hi? Go ahead. He says you can go upstairs.
I think I know who it's going to be, but I'm not going to spoil it for everybody. Go ahead.
I could not believe when everyone told me never even try it because people come from other countries just to try to meet him, and he won't talk to them. Knock on the door. He opens the door. Hey, Guy. And I'm like, holy shit. Steve Ditko let me up into his office.
They didn't even let that friggin' documentary filmmaker guy go up and see him. Well, actually, no, they did, but it was off camera, and it was for like a minute or something.
Yeah, you're talking about the guys from England or some shit?
Yeah, I think so. It was like that, searching for Ditko or whatever it was called, yeah.
I got to not only meet Dan Ditko, because, we had heard, I obviously knew who he was. He had heard my name, and I couldn't believe it. Standing here with Steve Ditko, the creator of Spider-Man, Doctor Strange, and the icon and the recluse who did not want to talk to anyone ever. We had between 35 and 45 minutes. I don't remember exactly. We looked at the phone, and we got that basic timeline from when I talked to my wife before, when I did afterward. But I had this private time with Steve Ditko at his studio. It's just unbelievable. And here I am, and that whole time we talked about art. And he and I talked about why, because I can write, I can draw, I can ink, I can do anything I want. Ian and I were always, if it's art, we could do it. If we don't know it, we can learn it. We'll learn it faster than everyone else, and we'll get ourselves to a professional level at a super fast fucking rate. It's just, we can't sing you a song, but if it's art, right, Ian? It doesn't matter. We could do it.
It's about that hyper focus again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Steve. So I stood there and talked to Steve, but I didn't. People said, "What did his studio look like?" I'm like, dude. All I was doing was staring right at this guy's face the whole fucking time. I was so worried that if I turned my glance, he would end the conversation.
Or he would just vanish. He would just vanish.
I was here, bro. I was right here in all my acting classes. Stay here. Stay focused. I was in the ring. Keep your eyes focused on your opponent and stay connected. And I just did the whole time. So after that, so on Jack Kirby's birthday, Jack, on a podcast with his family, specifically asked, move over. Here I am an hour later. I'm hanging out with Steve Ditko, and I walk out of the building, and I make a twist and turn, and I bump into this big black dude, and I look up, and I did boxing for 15 years.
Yeah.
Boxing fan for fucking since I was a child. And I'm going, holy shit, Evander fucking Holyfield. I could not believe what kind of a day I was having on Jack Kirby's birthday, no less. So here I am with Evander Holyfield, talk to him for a little while, and we take a photo, which is on my Facebook. And he took the picture, actually. And I was on the thing with Jack's family. Then I met Steve fucking Ditko and hung out with him at his studio. And then met Evander Holyfield all fucking day.
My God.
And you know what?
It was people.
I was just going to say, it all goes back to everything started, and all this stuff happened for Ian, me, and everything from comics. But go ahead.
Yeah.
We're all here because of comics.
I was just going to say, if there wasn't Kirby living simulation, I think that day right there we might be on to something.
Go.
I can't believe it. That's so cool. Well, listen, I've taken up a lot of your guys' time today. I feel like we could have done like a 6-hour podcast. It's been so much fun. I've learned so much. I am going to hit this outro. Hang out with me for a moment. If you want to throw out some dance moves, you can, you can always break out. And it's always interesting to see what dance moves people have. But I'm going to hit this outro. In the meantime, everybody, keep it nerdy. There we go. What are we working with? We got some Raise the Roof for you guys old school, some YMCA. Oh, there we go. I like that. That's pretty smooth. Working the shredders, even though the injury's low, he's still working it. Awesome, gentlemen.